Okay. Win Magazine editor Tristan Warner here, back again with another USA Wrestling Coaches Corner feature. Joined by special guest tonight, Maolu Woiwor. Maolu, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. You've started your own club, you have your own camp system, but let's go all the way back to the beginning just to get everybody familiar with you and your background. You grew up in that Apple Valley, Minnesota era where they were among the top wrestling programs in the entire country. They were right up there with St. Paris Graham, Blair Academy, and then Wyoming Seminary, those kind of teams. Talk about just your background in the sport and how coming up in that kind of an environment impacted you and set you up for a career now where you're doing tons of coaching and being involved in the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Tristan, and I've got to check out some of what you do this over this past couple of weeks, and I love what you guys are doing at Win Magazine. I've
Thank you.
been following you guys for a long time. Um, yeah, so I got my start wrestling kindergarten. I was obsessed with The Rock, otherwise known as Dwayne Johnson. And so I thought I was The Rock, and I got a flyer from my kindergarten teacher for wrestling. Long story short, I brought it home. My parents brought me to practice, and they didn't let me know I wasn't going to be jumping from the top ropes. So stuck around and got a trophy, and after that, I was hooked. But
That's awesome.
um, yeah, so wrestled pretty much through my youth, and then in seventh grade, my family made the decision to transfer to Apple Valley, which obviously, like, as you mentioned, is a hotbed of wrestling at that time. And yeah, I was there during a very unique era because I kind of crossed over from that Destin McCauley,
Yep.
um, Matt Kelleher, Dakota Traum era to finishing out with like Gable Stevenson, and obviously was teammates, good friends with Mark Hall, and one of my best friends, Seth Gross. So I got to be there at a pretty special time, and there was so many highs and lows, I think, for everybody involved in that program. Just any same as any high level program, but I was super grateful, and I think it had a profound impact on my life, honestly, and I think it definitely steered me in the direction I'm in now. And yeah, it was something special to be a part of. I think it's literally the definition of iron sharpens iron in that room. From where I transferred from, you kind of think you're the big dog, and you get in a room like that, and you realize talent isn't going to be enough. And
Yeah.
learned a lot of life lessons out there, and I'm super fortunate I was able to spend time at Apple Valley.
I was gonna say that could be a humbling wrestling room. I can imagine. Talk a little bit about, if you would, just for people. Very few people who have wrestled will probably be able to say that they came out of a room that has produced that many. Almost every single name you just named is like either is or was like a wrestling celebrity at some point in their career, whether it was peaking in Fargo or now in the UFC. Just talk a little bit about what were some things that you learned growing up and being in during your formative years in a room like that, and how has that, I guess, like transformed the way that now as a coach, is there anything specific that you know you learned from that experience being around those kind of guys and that level of skill and talent and work ethic and all that now affects you as a coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was huge for me, and I think too now coaching my club Maverick, it's funny because I make sure to use myself as an example to the kids when I talk about what not to do, because the time I came to Apple Valley, it was middle school, kind of like formative years as a
Yep.
young kid figuring out who you are. And I realized as an athlete I didn't take myself too seriously um, upon getting to Apple Valley, and I had the rough days of getting bounced out of the practice room for talking. And a huge thing I learned there from the start was just culture wise. Um, the expectation and the standard was something I'd never experienced before, where you go to a lot of rooms around the country, even still, where it's, the seniors, the big dogs on the team don't think they have to work hard because they go to their private club practices. At Apple Valley, though, we like, you looked at people who weren't working hard as kind of the outcasts, or the guys that were talking during the drill as the outcasts, the guys that were faking injuries off to the side. Like that was the minority of the room. And I think that was a huge, huge thing. And I talked to my kids about it today a ton, is like, you have to we have to make it the cool thing to want to come in here and work hard. Like we have a ton of fun at our practices, and I try to have an atmosphere that's very open and collaborative, and people don't feel like they're walking on eggshells. At the same time, there has to be a certain level of expectations when there's there's goals on the line, and there's people who are there traveling from a couple hours away, and people who are coming to
Mhm.
practice to work harder. So I think just the structure and foundation of that room, and then obviously getting into those kind of partners, man. I was just talking with Seth last weekend about when he was a varsity lightweight his freshman year. I was an eighth grader, and
Yeah.
I had to, for our wrestle off, I had to win a mini bracket to get to him to the wrestle off. And
It's
that mini
insane.
bracket was filled with future world team members and stuff like that. So
Just to
it
crack
was,
varsity lineup on your high school team. That's insane.
yeah, yeah. And and I didn't it was a little bit tough for me to navigate in the moment because I'm seeing kids who I'm beating on the on the state circuit wrestling, because in Minnesota you can wrestle as
Yeah.
a seventh grader, and I'm seeing kids I'm beating, or I'm whooping in the off season, winning high school state, or, at least placing high and being the guy. And I kind of had to wait my turn. But
Yeah.
in hindsight, it was the best thing that could have happened for me. It was kind of having to go through the ranks, and the coaches were great about bringing me on the road and kind of grooming me to be the guy when it was time.
Yeah, that's such a good point that you brought up, and I was going to ask about that. I think especially in like youth sports and probably even all the way up through high school now, there's such a urge, I think, for kids and parents really, that like you have to win now and everything's about now. But you're probably a perfect example of somebody who played the long game, and even if maybe that wasn't like what you wanted in the moment, do you feel like looking back now, like if you could give that advice to some other kid or some parent, like, hey, maybe even if I'm on the bench for a year or two but I'm behind Seth Gross, that's going to be better for
Yeah,
my long-term development than if I, crack the lineup at a different weight, or whatever it might be.
absolutely. And I think it's a pattern you see amongst those high level programs of the Wyoming Sam Blair,
Yep.
what Apple Valley was at that time, where guys, even I mean, on the collegiate circuit at Penn State now, you see
Yeah.
guys who could
Oklahoma
go and
State,
be,
Super D. Yeah.
yeah, they could be day one starters in a lot of programs, but they think the opportunity to train and be among that team culture is that important for their development. And I
Yep.
think that now is something huge I carry into my own club. I love to win, you love to win, and that's something naturally as humans we love to win, but development, if you're able to focus on that. And it took me time, and it's something I really try to drive home to my kids is, hey, we have time as long as we're willing to work, as long as we're willing to do the right things, but emphasizing development over success or over the spotlight early on is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. 1,000%. I think about that in my career so much sometimes, but we all live and we learn, and we always have all these retrospective thoughts that are like, man, I wish I would have done that. But
Yeah.
that's part of the process, and we're fortunate to have people like you that can learn those lessons and then pass it on to the next generation. So tell me a little bit about when your wrestling career ended. Was coaching something that you were always like, I'm always going to start my own club, or how, I guess, did the opportunity come about where you have your own club now? You started your own camp system, which we'll get into that too, and also you're over in Wisconsin now, right? So you kind of
Yep.
traverse state lines as well.
Yeah. So my athletic career came to an end. It was a little bit of a unique situation. So my freshman, sophomore, junior year, I'd won a state championship, and after my junior year at Fargo, didn't really go the way I wanted it to. And regardless, though, I was driving back with my parents on that drive from Fargo, so you got some time to think.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I really just had felt like relieved to be done. And you go through exhausting stretches of training and competing, but it was the first time I really was just like, hey, I want to be away. I want to hang out with my friends that don't wrestle. I want to, and so
Hmm.
I think that was kind of the first red flag. And I didn't end up wrestling my senior year, which
Okay.
forced the state title was on the line. And it was I would chalk it up mostly to burnout, in the sense of self-inflicted burnout is what I would say. My parents were incredible.
Yeah.
The coaches were incredible. My teammates, they were awesome. They supported me. I would say it was cutting weight. I cut weight much too early on in my career, and it's something that affected me kind of through the middle of my high school career. To answer your question, as far as getting on the coaching scene, I would say the beginning of that came actually as an athlete at Apple Valley, because Coach Jim Jackson, who was our head coach at the time, the culture there was to kind of go back and help with the young kids, and so he would make us a couple times a month go into the room, and it was something I kind of took a liking to. The little kids looked up to us a ton, and so it wasn't really hands on, like super technical or philosophy mentality stuff, but it was being around the room in a minority coaching role. And
Yeah.
I knew then I enjoyed doing it. And then after I decided not to go out for wrestling my senior year, it was about a year later. My our former head coach at Apple Valley, he kept hitting me up and reaching out to me. He had moved over to a school called Shakopee in Minnesota, and he recruited me over there to go help coach. And I started with the high school team and on the youth club circuit, coaching at the same time. And within the first month or two of that, I knew it was for me, and I knew I could crush it. To be honest.
That's so cool. What was it about that age group that you liked so much? Because I mean, you probably, like you said, with how many state titles you won and Fargo experience, you could have coached at any level, really. What was it about like the young youth kids, or now even your club probably goes, I would imagine, all the way up K through 12. So what is it about those younger guys that you really drew you to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think. I think the big thing, even when I did start like really getting into coaching, my first couple years, I was like, all right, I just need to climb the ladder, climb the ranks, and get to be a collegiate coach.
Yep.
And thinking about it now in real time, I think that was a little bit trying to validate what I didn't do in my own career, and thinking, hey, if I can go coach collegiately, like that'll prove, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or that another goal to accomplish. But I have friends that coach collegiately now, and former collegiate coaches, and I couldn't be more glad I'm on the route I am now,
Yeah.
because I would say with these young kids, the biggest thing is they're impressionable. They can be molded, and
Exactly.
they even the high school kids frustrate me a little bit sometimes, because we do have high schoolers. We're in our third upcoming season, but for them, it's. I mean, I'm sure they got life figured out, so it's hard to talk to them
Oh yeah.
sometimes.
Yep. Yep.
Wrestling and non-wrestling, and where the young kids, they kind of are willing, to soak up what you give them. And I think, too, by design, starting my own club, I wanted to have my first batch of kids produced that you could kind of track back to. And we have opportunities for high schoolers out here, but I think the main focus has been on the youth club circuit. And my goals are definitely to produce, youth wrestlers that climb the ranks into being dominant high school wrestlers, go produce wrestlers that compete in college and on the world circuit internationally and on the senior level. And more importantly, just go out and produce leaders of the next generation in whatever field it is, even outside of wrestling.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's exactly what our country needs, at the grassroots level, to build the future generation of wrestlers, not not coaches that are, you probably remember back to kind of like our era. I feel like there was, everybody knew that youth coach that was just all about winning, but a lot of those kids then didn't make it in the sport past like sixth grade. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
awesome that you're on the front lines there doing that. Um, Tell me a little bit about what the process looked like of starting your own club. When we first started this initiative with USA Wrestling back, not this past September, the year before, so almost 2 years ago now. One of the big topics that they brought up, and I think Tony Black with USA Wrestling, who also is a Wisconsin guy, I think he brought up the example something like he had a relative or someone that he knew who didn't have any wrestling background but had a kid that got into it, and he was interested in starting a wrestling club, but he's like, how would somebody like that, has that idea but has no idea where to go with it? So tell me a little bit about, if you would, like, you got to get a facility, you got to get mats, you got to get assistant coaches, you got to start branding and a website, and you got to start marketing it to people. How, I guess, from zero to where you are now, what did that process look like?
yeah, I'm I would like to clarify. I'm still working my way. There's a lot of great clubs in the country. I'm chasing after. So
Yeah.
we're doing well. But to answer your question, I would say for me, it was I had a great connection with Seth Gross, who at the time was coaching at the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I was working out in Southern California with my brother Danny Wayware, and Seth just kept calling my phone. Like he was coaching on staff at the Badgers, and he's like, "Dude, we got to start a youth club, man. Like that's where it's at, this youth circuit." And I finally took him up, checked out Wisconsin, and um, Seth and his wife Rana, some of my favorite people in the world, but they took me in and I moved out here. And I first started with a school out here called Milton High School with
Yep.
Coach Pat Yauk and the hometown of Aiden Sinclair, who have a super awesome relationship with. But we started running kind of underground esque like practices out of the high school. Yauk was great and let us use the room. So Seth and I started an unofficial club. It was called FTW Wrestling, like fun to watch wrestling.
That's cool.
Just trying to encourage kids to go after points, fearless innovation style of wrestling. And we did that for about a year and a half, but it wasn't anything super, super official. Seth obviously was tied into
Yeah.
the Badger wrestling and had his obligations there. And I was still just kind of getting my feet wet. Fast forward to the fall of 2024, Seth resigns from the Badger staff and had an incredible offer he couldn't pass up from a club called Matt Pack in North Dakota. And so he just had his baby and gotten married, and he accepted the job out there. And I was kind of at a crossroads about, do I go back to California, go to Minnesota, try and stick it out here and see what happens. And I had some really good people in my corner out here who encouraged me to stay out here and they would support me. So I started Maverick Wrestling, which is my club now. And
Yep.
from there, it was practices at the high school. And I had, went out of my way from the beginning to make sure I have good rapport with the high school wrestling coach. And he was super gracious and let me use the room to run practices. And that's how it started, was building kind of a core group out, which sidebar is something I definitely encourage people is to get in touch with your local community, whether it's rec program YMCA style or even just like the local high school, and see
Right.
what opportunities are available. But yeah, we started out of the high school the first year, and then this past fall got into a building with some close friends and affiliates who had purchased an old bowling alley. And
That's
yeah,
pretty
we
cool.
got some mats laid down there, found some awesome sponsors, and we've been rocking it out there. But
That's
I
cool.
would say the biggest thing, and I learned this at Apple Valley that I still think not enough people around the country do, is if you're the head coach of a youth program, head coach of a high school program, middle school, whatever it may be, there needs to be a level of cohesiveness between all levels.
Right.
You don't have to be good friends. You don't have to, kumbaya on the weekends, but I think the head coach should have an idea what's going on in the youth room, the middle school room, at least popping in to show face and vice versa. Because
Yeah.
I think the more familiarity that's there, people get on the same page. I think that's a huge part of being a championship level program. And I've went out of my way for these local communities, not just where I'm based out of, but to jump in, offer to do a free clinic, offer to do whatever it may be. And out of just genuine respect of being someone who's coming from outside the area and trying to build bridges as opposed to being just a one-off singular
Yeah.
entity out here.
Yep. That's awesome. That's such a cool story. You guys are obviously growing, I'm sure, and branding and word of mouth is a big thing. I'm sure. You have a couple guys start doing well at a tournament, and people start wondering. But
Yeah.
yeah, tell me a little bit about what the structure of your club looks like. I mean, do you run all year round? Do you run every day of the week? Is it two different practices? Sometimes I've talked to coaches who have like a beginner practice and then an advanced, or maybe just go through a little bit about like how you decided, and maybe that's still evolving too, but what does the
Yeah.
structure look like?
No, that's the perfect word to describe it. Is it's evolving right now, and I think going into year three, it's something I'm constantly thinking about and trying trying to revise, and improve the way like our tier system is done as of now. This past season, it was 3 tiers: the junior mavs, like beginner level wrestlers,
Yep.
and that's capped at about 10 to 12 kids, just because you can't have a million kids running around.
Yeah.
That then our intermediate group, which is more, wrestlers who are looking for a little bit of extra work from around the area. And then our advanced group, which the age is kind of range, but it's for more experienced wrestlers, kids who are doing the national circuit stuff. And
Yep.
even to your point about it evolving, I was having a good conversation with one of my club parents who I've got a lot of respect for. And he took me to the side at the RAF event the other weekend, and he was like, "Hey, I think sometimes like unknowingly you refer to the advanced group as the older group, and I think some kids feel a type of way about it. And his kids are in that group, so it wasn't him personally, but there is the advanced group, but there might be kids in that group that are younger than in the intermediate group. But that's something I'm still trying to smooth out and iron out. We go during the year. We go 4 times a week. And then it's it's a couple about a 90-minute practice,
Yep.
and the little guys will only go twice a week. Middle group is going 3 times a week, but that's something too I'm just still looking to improve on. Like little guys don't need to be in there for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So stuff like that I'm constantly trying to change, and like you said, is evolving.
Yeah, really cool. Um, with those little guys group, just out of curiosity, like, how do you find, or have you found, or maybe you're still investigating this, but what is the best way to get, you take a random 6-year-old kid who kind of like yourself back in the day, who saw a flyer or thinks it's WWE or whatever, had a brother that wrestled, whatever it might be. How do you take a kid like that and make the sport fun enough, but also, get them to learn some stuff, I guess, where I don't know. Wrestling is one of those sports. It's not like soccer. No offense to soccer, but where you
Yeah.
just run around and kick a ball and all the kids are smiling. It's like, I mean, I remember going to practice when I was like 6, like coming home crying with a bloody lip and whatever. How do you
Yep.
uh, how do you make it fun for them, but also get them to buy in, but also teach them some wrestling?
Yeah, that's another awesome question, because I think naturally us coaches, it's something we deal with, because
Yeah,
um the cliche is I want to make sure they're having fun, make sure they're passionate about the sport, but it's easier said than
hard to do.
done. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think a big thing for me, and something I'm really really looking to innovate more on this year with my advanced group, but is trying to gamify the experience. That's something kids relate to a lot, whether it be video games or, games on the mat you can actually play. But um, if you can make the practice feel, like we're having more fun by doing drills that offer a
building
point.
skill that they don't even know that they're building because they're having fun. Yeah,
100%. I
yeah,
mean, you've seen the toe touch, stuff like that.
yeah.
But I think even the little kids, man, they want to naturally impress you if they have respect for you as a coach, or if they look up to you. So they will take pride in gaining skills and being able to do what you've been working on. Every kid is learning at a different level, especially at that age. But I think for the most part, if you have some quality control to what you're doing, which is why we cap our group, it doesn't feel like daycare. It feels like, and the best part is too, a lot of them are little brothers and little sisters. But I would say gamifying the experience as much as possible. And like I said, I'm working on something what I feel like is going to be huge for our club, and hopefully innovative enough for other clubs to use. Nothing too groundbreaking, but just something to kind of XP unlock, achievement unlock type deal for these kids, for working their butt off.
That's cool. That's really cool. Um, I wanted to ask you, after you brought up, your experience with the weight cutting and how that burnt you out to a point where, you missed a year of wrestling there, an important year. How has your perspective now as a coach, like, are you one of those coaches? Have you gone the complete opposite direction where, you don't want any of your kids cutting weight, or just wanted to see how you go about that situation? Because, I mean, it's kind of a mixed line, because it's like, I know there's a lot of coaches out there that, preach you shouldn't cut any weight at all. But when you look at the best guys in the country at high school and college, you see someone like Sergio Vega, who's, they're, oh, he was cutting from 160, and you look at him, he's like, that guy does not look like a 141. So like
Yeah.
obviously it's going on to some degree, but there's a healthier way to do it. So I just kind of
Yeah.
wanted to ask, what's your philosophy on that, especially for these younger kids?
Yeah. And I think there's there's a range, there's a spectrum to it. Like you were saying, someone like Vega, he's got nutritionists, he's got dietitians and resources to
Yeah,
that level. With these young kids, I mean, it's pretty non-negotiable for me. I'm not like actively checking. I can tell if a parent is, doing a little bit too much, and I've had those tough conversations because they're necessary. What I will say is, you know, and you know this probably just as well as I do, but there's a difference between watching your weight and cutting weight.
yep,
If you're not eating McDonald's that week, or you have a light breakfast before weigh-ins, I don't think that's the end of the world, even for the younger kids.
yeah,
The super little kids don't need to be watching their weight even, but when you
no,
start to get to kids who are going on the Tulsa circuit and doing things like that, I think watching your weight, having a healthy week, that's fine. I think
yeah,
that almost teaches them a certain level of discipline,
yeah,
especially if they aspire to wrestle collegiately or wherever it may be. High school wise, I think, and the older kids that I come in contact with, I try to tell them from my experience, focus on the development, focus on getting your wrestling better. Cause once again, I use myself as the bad example of, I was cutting weight, trying to put myself in the best position, and
yeah.
and thinking I'm going to have the advantage here. And
I would
I
imagine
think
you were probably the guy at practice who has all the sweats on and is more worried about losing how much weight you lost during the practice than actually developing the skill. At least that's
verbatim,
the
man. You
perception.
said that's literally you know what it's like, man. And you come in there and all you can think about is what that scale is gonna say after
Yep,
practice.
yep.
And
We've
I
all seen it too
I
many times.
yeah,
Yep.
and even the little kids too, nobody's coming in with the sweats and
No.
trying to do all that. You need to focus on your development, and that's a big thing philosophy wise for our club. Like you mentioned, back in the day, there'd be those coaches where it's just winning, winning. And like I said, I'm not shy about the fact I want to win. I
Yeah.
want my athletes to win.
Yep.
I think they need to have that level of competitiveness, and I try to teach them that level of competitiveness, because when they go into the real world, you're gonna have to compete for jobs. You're gonna have to compete for whatever it may be. Maybe the man or woman of your dreams,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And I think my ego has never been as important as our athletes' development. So
Yep.
it comes back to even the way I run the club. It's a collaborative thing. I bring in clinicians as much as I can. I want to have people in the room that know more than me about the sport. It's I never, as much as I'm able to, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want it to be an open dialogue. um, I feel like I can learn from these kids. I feel like I can learn from my staff, and I've seen it unfold in real time.
That's awesome. That's the motto to have right there. Talk a little bit about that if you would. Just assembling a staff, has that kind of also grown as the club's grown, or did you know from day one, like, all right, if I'm start kind of like Gross did to you, like if I'm starting this club, I need this guy as my assistant. How did that process look?
Yeah, that's kind of an evolving thing as well. I think a huge resource has been the University of Wisconsin. It's
Yep.
about half an hour away from us, so
Okay, that's
I've had
great.
a lot of awesome wrestlers from up there. We had Braxton Amos doing our helping with our freestyle and Greco, Zan Fugit before he went down to Missouri,
Yeah.
Royce Nilo. Right now we've got Carson Exford, and so those kind of guys have been a bit of a rotating cast. And then I've leaned into the help of some awesome wrestling parents I have out here. There's a family out here, the Holden family, and Davey Starks, who was a wrestler from Stoughton, wrestled pretty high level. And um, yeah, I think honestly, in doing the camps too, like we
Yeah.
we put on a camp about once a month during the regular season, if not more. Where Sinclair's comes through, Gross, a bunch of high level wrestlers as well who are still actively competing. And I think that like collaboration's like my biggest advantage out
Yeah.
here when it comes to running this club, in comparison to a lot of these other clubs. It's like I never feel like I need to be the smartest in the room.
That's awesome. That's so great. Um, and then last question about your club. Talk about the parents a little bit if you would. I think and I've gotten this sentiment from other club coaches I've talked to, especially who run like the youth and the K through 12 age level. But sometimes it seems like educating the parents or even like coaching the parents
Yeah.
on wrestling sometimes, or about things like weight cutting and that kind of stuff is equally as important as the kids, because at the end of the day, I mean, I've had a lot of coaches say various quotes on this topic, but it's like, you're only with the kid what, couple hours a week, but they're with them all the time, so they're obviously a stronger influence. So what does that process look like for you, and how do you continue to make sure that you have good rapport with the parents and are getting them to also transmit the right messages to their kids?
Yeah, that's an awesome point. You kind of hit the nail on the head there too with what your coach had told you.
Yep.
Um, it's no secret wrestling parents are they can be pretty crazy.
Pretty intense,
I
yeah.
think a lot of them mean well, and I try to often put myself in their shoes before responding or reacting to whatever it may be that's on their mind. I don't ever feel like I'm above answering to critiques from my own wrestling parents or other wrestling parents.
Yep.
But I think you're absolutely right. You have to coach them on how to, you know, how to put their kids in the best position to develop. One thing about our club, and this goes both ways for a lot of people, our club, the way it's laid out, there's kind of an aerial open view of the practice, so the parents are technically in the room. And there was some growing pains the first year of just like making sure, having to micromanage the noise, but
Yeah.
that's pretty much done with. I would say I know a lot of coaches don't like parents in the room, and I can see that perspective. I
Yeah.
think one thing that is a benefit to it is especially these local tournaments, man. I can't be in the corner every time. So it's gonna be dad, it's gonna be mom.
Yep.
And I think if they're at practice 3 4 times a week and they're reinforcing the philosophy that they get to hear speak to their kids, and then even on a micro scale, like, they always hear you talking about, hey, you got to stuff the head first, don't reach over top. That might be something they echo.
It resonates with them as well, yeah.
Exactly. And I know there's a lot of wrestling dads who former wrestlers where they know enough to watch the practices and then go home and kind of like, we're on the cross wrist roll. I'm screaming, drop your shoulder a million times at practice, and they're telling their kids the same thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I think too, I you have to, and it's a huge lesson I learned with our coach, the legendary Jim Jackson out of Apple Valley, that he did an incredible job of, that I move forward with, is everybody a part of your program has to feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
They have to feel seen. They have to be able to feel like their voice can be heard. And that stretches not, it stretches past the athletes to the parents, to the grandma or grandpa that drops them off 1 time a week, the little brothers and little sisters. You want to develop a relationship with everybody. And I think too, that's a bit where I separate myself, is trying to prioritize like relationships over memberships.
Yeah.
Anybody who comes in the room, I'm going up and shaking their hand, seeing how they're feeling, anything like that, I think goes a long way. And outside of the trust, is just earning their respect, and them earning my respect through some rapport like that. And
Yeah.
it's a core value of our club that these kids learn, because, like I said, I want to develop really good people. Like I said, instilling the passion. I think that's going to be a part of it, but wrestling is like my vehicle through this, through Maverick, to develop good people. And yeah, I think that's, our kids come off the mat, they shake each coach's hand after practice, they shake each other's hand before they go grab a water break. And when the atmosphere feels open enough, feels collaborative enough, feels like there's a certain level of respect between everybody, I think it works much more efficiently. And I think that's a huge part with the parents too.
Yep.
And one last thing I'll say on that piece is, um, I think a huge a huge thing that'll separate us over this next decade, and is currently, in my opinion, separating us from a lot of other clubs, is just having one location.
Yeah.
I really respect the people who expand to multiple locations or do the satellite thing, but I think for us and our path, having one location is huge, because you see somebody in a Maverick shirt or a Maverick singlet, out at a tournament. It's not, I've never seen this person in my life. You know who they are. They all come to practice together, and there's that sense of community that's developed. You come to practice, you're going to see me. It's not a if and or maybe, unless I'm out at Driftless, you're going to get me and my coaching staff. So
You've got the
sorry, a little
family
bit
feel.
long winded there, but
No, no, that's good. You got the family feel. I love that. That's like you said. There's plenty of clubs that do that, and I'm sure they find a way to make it work. But that's really cool that you guys have that more intimate thing going on with like you said, you're always going to be there. You know all the kids. They all know each other, and that kind of probably answers one of my earlier questions about making it fun. I think that's more fun for the kids when it's more of a team feel, whereas they all know each other and kind of grow up in the sport together. And I know that's been a thing for probably all of us too. Um,
yeah, I'm sure you've experienced it too, where it's um practice is hard sometimes to show up, but when your buddy's showing up, makes it a little
exactly.
bit easier. Getting on the road is a little bit easier when I know my friends are there. Just dealing with adversity, and the person you shed blood, sweat, and tears with is next to you, is
100%.
is a
That's how you. That's
different
really the only
feeling.
way to get through it, I think, because otherwise, I don't know anybody that's ever done the sport of wrestling just completely in isolation by themselves. That
The
there's
yeah, the shared struggle, right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Driftless Ranch. Talk a little bit about the camp system. So right before we went on the air here, you told me you had 6 camps already this summer. So you obviously been pretty busy. Tell me a little bit about how the idea for the camp came about, and then I think you said this has been your third summer. How has it been evolving?
Yeah, it's been incredible, and even the Driftless and Maverick, and what we're doing with Maverick Elite, kind of our dual teams in our elite sessions we run at Maverick. I like to look at it as more of an ecosystem, not to sound corny, but genuinely, like, um, I think they all work sort of under one umbrella.
Yeah,
And Driftless has been a huge part of that, and it's kind of like my crown jewel project, honestly. One of my good friends out here who I met through wrestling, and his son competes for me now. His little son does too, but he um, he has a private hunting ranch in the southwestern part of Wisconsin, where people from all around the world come to do high fence hunting, and they have elk, red stag, caribou, a bunch of incredible animals on this property.
it's
And
awesome.
we were out there a few years ago, and I think it was for Thanksgiving, and he's like, "Yo, it'd be cool. You did a wrestling camp out here," and I'm just like, "Hey." It's like, don't joke around, man, because we could get something rolling. And yeah, we ended up doing it that summer. It was actually Seth and I did the first summer of camps. It was just 2 camps. Had no idea what to expect, and yeah, it was huge, man, from the start, in the sense of like the reaction we got and the momentum. The property is incredible. It's the main lodge. We built out a bunk room with about 40 bunk beds where the kids sleep, and
Sick.
yeah, they have an indoor arcade, an indoor movie theater, indoor pool, and jacuzzi. It,
My
it
God,
it's a little bit bougie sometimes
it's
for
a
for
little bit
my
cheap out
liking. Is
there.
Yeah,
I
but
saw
no,
on
I
your
think.
website there's a movie theater. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
sweet.
it is definitely a premium experience in that sense, but we also make sure at the pole barn, down the dirt road, we'll walk or run to, that we get some work in. And we've had kids from, I think, over like 22 states now after this summer.
Wow,
Yeah, we sold out 6 back-to-back 3 and 4 day camps this year.
it's amazing.
And the biggest thing with Driftless, where I'm really proud of, is just like I said, the reactions and the responses we get from parents after. And the intention is, we want kids to feel like something changed after they leave. And a huge one we get a lot is just that kids, their confidence shoots up. Their
Yeah,
confidence in their wrestling, their confidence in their social skills. We get a lot of kids who've never even spent the night over somewhere, that come over to camp, and now they have friends for life. So
yeah,
it's cool between Maverick, our Maverick Elite stuff, which sidebar too is kind of under that same umbrella of traveling dual teams we do, kind of curated by myself and one of my wrestling dads, Matt Folkens, who is just a rock star as far as organizing the best wrestlers in the country, youth wrestlers in the country and Midwest to meet up at Maverick about once a month. And Driftless, all these kids are starting to know each other from around the country. And I genuinely think we're going to look back a decade from now and we're going to be pointing out all Americans, world team members, NCAA champs, that kind of cool stuff. But even more importantly, I keep going back to like just leaders in their field,
Yeah.
professionally, and people who are doing the right things.
That's awesome. So I saw on your website you had some crazy good clinicians. Do you guys, how far in advance do you plan for the next summer? Like I imagine you probably are already wheels turning about summer 2027. How you're going to grow that thing even further?
Yeah. The booking clinicians piece is a little bit tricky sometimes because it falls in the month of June and um you don't want to bother,
Somebody who's
you
doing
know,
Final
a
X
guy,
or whatever.
yeah, a guy wrestling a
The U.S.
D1
Open.
season
Yeah,
with a
exactly.
proposition for the summer, and then with the senior level guys, USA Wrestling's not telling me when Final X is dropping, so I gotta. One of my good buddies, Real Woods, was set to do our 16th through 19th camp, but then they announced Final X.
Yeah,
Obviously, he ended up having to push it back, but we had to replace him with Stefan Micic, who absolutely
not
crushed
a
it.
bad
But
consolation prize.
yeah, yeah, which is awesome because once again, man, it's about bringing people in and around for the kids, and then selfishly for me too. I want to see
Yeah,
what these guys are doing when they come around. I'm asking them,
yeah,
how they came up, what they would do if they were in my shoes running a club. But as far as the overall planning to your main point in the question, it it's already started for next summer, and it's something that's definitely a process, and I think sometimes I attack it as well as Maverick is a little bit too much of a one man army, and I'm actively trying to be better about that because this year I had an awesome staff who supported me at Driftless. But
yeah,
as far as the admin stuff, I'm going to work right now on it.
yeah. Really cool. So obviously, with Win being a national publication, and this article and this video obviously will go to the masses. Tell the listeners or the readers what's how what's the website. What information do they need to know if they want to get their kid signed up ahead of time, or at least just look into it for next summer.
Yeah, the camps are called Driftless Ranch Wrestling Camps. The website for us is driftlesscamps.com. So just DRIFTLESS camps, CAMPS.com. And social media, we're Driftless Ranch Wrestling Camps on Facebook, and then Instagram is Driftless Camps. And yeah, we sold out this past summer, hoping to do the same thing again. But
You
yeah,
said
I
you'll have
appreciate.
probably six ish, and they're what in the June July range.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty much the month of June. We kind of put a lock on, and it seemed to be a good window for us to do that.
Do you have guys up there training for Fargo?
Yeah, so we had a couple kids this year who came into camp. It's been mostly youth and middle school, but we did have a high school camp where we
Cool.
caught some kids, and I'm working on doing something a little bit special for those wrestlers who fall in that category to make sure they're able to get some good app freestyle training and trying to just always looking for new twists. And I think even next year looking to do more of a intensive driftless camp where we bring some hammers together to go at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Best way to get ready for Fargo. Um,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I got to conclude the interview, and well, obviously I'll write an article based on this interview. But I feel like the moral of the story, from what I've heard from your story, is surrounding yourself with the best people. Sounds like from your Apple Valley days to now as a coach, and then trying to get the kids all together and with the best coaches and the best influences. Would you say that's kind of been like the moral of the story for you? And I guess if you were to offer any advice to other coaches out there, or even to young kids who are wrestlers or parents, it sounds like really surrounding yourself with the best has been like your life story, if I could summarize it, in the wrestling realm.
Yeah. And I would definitely want to be clear. It's taken me time to you know get to where I'm at with the club and everything rolling, and I've had to go through trial and error. I've had to kind of figure things out on my own, go through some lows, but obviously persevering. But yeah, you're 100% on point. The people you surround yourself with, and I think one big thing I would want to be known, even with our wrestling club, is looking at Maverick as like a destination, a destination where good wrestling happens, where people come to Southern Wisconsin from all around the country, and
Yep.
it's more than just a club with the camps we do. I want it to be kind of just an ecosystem, and um, yeah, I really appreciate people like you, especially um, guys our age who are pushing the sport further through media.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a journalist, and I wanted to be kind of in the line of work you were in originally when I was coming out of high school, because that's I'm I'm super intrigued by the media world of sports and things like that, and I think people like you are helping push it even further. So I can't thank you enough, man.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, and also, like I said, I'm always looking for not only good coaches to interview and stuff, but I'm always looking for coaches to pen me, a guest column here or there, or write me an article about, some coaching advice. So I'll have to take you up on that at some point and follow that because I mean, in this issue alone, I think we have 3 or 4 different coaches from around the country that just from people I've met from interviewing them or at Fargo or whatever. They're like, hey, yeah, I'll write you an article about this topic or nutrition or whatever, how we train in the summer, that kind of stuff. So I'll have to
Yeah,
follow up with you about that. That would be real good. I like everything I'm hearing from what you're doing up there.
I appreciate it, brother. My closing note would just be, from the athletes to coaches, parents, is just stay curious as long as possible. I think
Yeah,
that's what will get you where you're looking to be.
I totally agree. In all facets beyond wrestling too. So,
Thanks
um,
so much for having me on, Tristan.
yep. Thanks, Malu. Take care, and like I said, we'll have this article out here in the Fargo issue that publishes on July 31st. And then all fans can obviously see this YouTube video interview, and it'll be QR code linked to the article, which will be published in late July in the digital issue of the magazine, the print magazine, and we will also publish online on our website. And so, thanks again, man. Take care, and we'll see you in the future around.
Let's go. Shout out to Win Magazine. Thanks, Tristan.
Yep. Take care.
See you, man.